Hello, everyone. So for my final project, I started researching my own cultural background. I'm English, Irish, Scottish, and Hungarian, but for this purpose, I chose to research my Irish and Scottish and English roots. Um, and that process was a very humbling process. At first, I really struggled and I realized how little I actually know about my own cultural background. So much so that when I was doing my research or like beginning it, I had a difficult time even finding sources because I didn't even know how to search for it or what I was searching for. So I felt pretty ignorant, honestly. And I ended up reaching out to somebody who specializes in Celtic magic and folklore. And so they were a great resource to me and a great starting point. And I realized that the Celtic people did not write down their history. They passed it on via oral traditions. So they were master storytellers, which makes sense why it's so hard to learn about the ancient Celtic practices. However, unfortunately, because of that, the only written documents we have of like the Celtic people are from their enemies, which are the Romans and the Greeks. And they started writing about them about the same time that Christianity was introduced to the Celtic people. So there, at that time, not only was the written document pretty biased and embellished to make them look like savages, but it also kind of described a time when they were being influenced by Christianity. So it wasn't completely uniquely their own culture. And I learned that Celtic, the word itself, is like incredibly broad. So it spans all the way from Ireland to Scotland and all the way from ancient times up until now. One thing that I really have enjoyed from this research are all of the mythological stories I've been learning, and I wanted to share with you guys one story in particular, and that's of this goddess Airmid. And Airmid is the goddess of herbal medicine and healing. And the story goes something along the lines of this. So Airmid's father is the god of medicine, and the king at the time was injured in battle and his hand was cut off. And in order to rule, you have to be whole. So that means he was going to lose his throne. Devastated, he prayed to Airmid's father to fix his hand. And so he fixed his hand with a silver. So he cast him a hand of silver. Unfortunately, that still doesn't qualify as being whole because technically part of him would be metal. So unsatisfied with that result, Airmid and her brother got to work. Both of them are both incredible healers as well. And they faceted the king a new hand made of human flesh. And this hand was perfect so that he could continue to rule. Well, Airmid's father had a very frail ego and was humiliated by this, and in a ego-filled rage came down and killed Airmid's brother. And for a year straight, Airmid grieved, and she'd go to his gravesite and process. And on the last day of the year, she showed up and there was 365 herbs. Each herb has a specific cure for each part of the body or an affinity for a part of the body. And it was believed that all of these herbs together possess all of the healing powers of the world and they can heal anything. And so Airmid began to collect these herbs and put them on their cloak. And as she began to collect them, the herbs spoke to her and told her their medicine. And Airmid's father, being the jealous man that he is, was unsatisfied upon hearing this, and so he ran down in a jealous rage and flipped the cloak over, scattering the herbs all over the world and losing them Fortunately, Airmid had a good memory and she memorized the medicine of the herbs and what the herbs told her. But it's believed that because of this is why we suffer from illnesses. And it's important to pray to Airmid when you're going through something medically related so that she can help heal you with her herbal medicines. This story describes so many things to me. It talks about the connection people have with the land, the many ways the human ego can destroy things and lose sight of what's important over pride, the power of grief, and the necessity of working together for a greater good. And to me, that explains a lot about the Celtic people and some of their values and traditions. And this reminds me about our first journal entry where we wrote about our own ancestral lines and the medicine makers in our lines. And I realized not only do I have medicine makers within my immediate family, but also my great, 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 great ancestors were also incredible medicine people. And they worked with the land deeply for survival, and like even their blades are their war blades are replicated to be like nature, so they look like leaves, and so they have this really connected relationship with the land that they live on, and it's so important. Like the warriors are covered in this blue yarrow paste, which is antimicrobial, so if they get cut in war, the herbs help heal them. And I think this is such a beautiful relationship, and they really do believe in this kind of like give and take with the land. And it also reminded me of in the Healing Ways of Africa when Some sat with the tree and he saw the green lady, and the green lady spoke to him and gave him this eternal feeling of belonging and love. And it just reminds me of how incredibly important these connections are that we share with the plants, and how life is this constant dance, giving and receiving from one another and from this earth, and how important that is to our ancestors and to ourselves today. Well, thank you all for listening, and I look forward to watching everyone's presentations.